Yeah, so and what's interesting is you have all of these secret organizations that will admit, like the Illuminati openly admitted that they adopted their methodology from the Jesuit order, that they studied what the Jesuits did and how they did it. Rockefellers, there's a book written on the life of John D. Rockefeller, how he developed his whole Rockefeller organization around the discipline of the Jesuit order. My wife works for an accounting firm, and when she was going through college, she remembers these big accounting firms talking about how they study the Jesuit order to develop their, systems for finance and so on. There was a guy, Alberto Izaga, like a year and a half ago, who went nuts suddenly over in London and killed his 2-year-old daughter. And it was a bizarre case, but he was like a millionaire finance guy and worked for some powerful company. And when they arrested him, while he was on trial, he was muttering that he was part of an international conspiracy to take over the financial world, and he was working with a secret group of financiers who were using the methods of the Jesuit order to take over the financial world.
Well, I read Heinz Hobel's Order of the Death said, and it had the Nazi documents where Hitler modeled the Gestapo and his secret police SS off of the Jesuits.
Absolutely. There's a number of books written about that. And we talk about that in The Lamp in the Dark as well. But and that whole relationship, a lot of people are shocked when they learn about, the idea that the Vatican was working with Hitler and that they had a concordat with Germany and so on. But Adrian Hilton, in his book, The Principality and the Power of Europe, the guy who's talking about the European Union, he says the way to understand that is to go back and look at the relationship of the Vatican with Charlemagne. Charlemagne, who was the first Holy Roman Emperor, he reigned over Germany. Okay? So all the way back, 8th century A.D., the Pope crowned Charlemagne as, the first Holy Roman Emperor. And from then on, so many of these European families, if you get the National Geographic documentary Inside the Vatican, and it's during the time of Pope John Paul II, you see all of these royal members of the European families and so on who go to the Vatican and they all bow down and they kiss the Pope's ring, and they venerate him like he's a god.
Well, let's expand on that, because I want to, again, from your research, understand something. We know that the King of England, Edward VIII, was a Nazi, a fan of Hitler, had to escape Germany once the war started. He was from a German family. The House of Windsor is really the House of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. For those that don't know, why then, if the Vatican was so powerful and setting up this continental empire through Germany and through Mussolini, why then did England and the U.S. turn against them when we know the Illuminists were involved, as your films show, in a lot of the formation of the United States and the Freemasons? If that's all controlled by the Vatican, then why, and we know there was a secret peace treaty now declassified between England and Germany, so why then was Hitler rebuffed? Because it does appear there are some power shifts here. Clearly, Bilderberg is dominated by the papacy, but then it interlocks with the United States, and so do these groups fight sometimes, or what's going on?
It seems, there are different theories that I've read, because that's a great question. It's the one that, sort of drives the research, so much of it. But from the arguments that I've heard, it's kind of like the ordo ab chaos, order out of chaos. You create the chaos, and from that, through the chaos that you've created, you establish your world order. And there are some people who believe that Germany was being used. There are some who even think that Germany was used specifically because it was Martin Luther, who was a German, who from Germany launched the Protestant Reformation.
Well, it was, and we actually know from the Lord Milner group that right after World War I, these are public documents, they said, we're going to finance a war leader, we're going to build Germany up, and then we're going to destroy them, just like World War I. And so it was a repeat of that. That
concurs with the research that I've been getting and the theories that people believe that the reason Rome and the Jesuits wanted revenge on Germany, that they wanted to use Germany, if you will, as this kind of instrument of destruction, was partly revenge for the Reformation, because it was from Germany that the reform was launched. You know,
but I mean, why do that when Germany was pretty much a Catholic country at that time, and through the World Council of Churches, the Rockefellers set up. Most of the Protestant churches are New World Order now. I mean, because you're going back to the Jesuit stealth mode.
Right. Now, that's a very good question, and I wish I had a more detailed answer for you. I think there's something to the doctrine. If you study the Jesuits in history, they were always known for their revenge, and that they would not stop until they got vengeance on whoever it was that had opposed them. And this is why John Adams says in his quote, he says that all the monarchs of Europe trembled in fear over the idea of Jesuit assassination. Because if you cross these guys, they didn't care how long it took. It could take a year, 5 years, 10 years. They would come after you, and they would find a way to get you. One of the popes that suppressed them signed a bull, of eternal, excommunication for the Jesuits.
Yeah, that's another issue. Why did the Catholic Church go after the Jesuits? So are you saying it's more the Jesuits than just the Catholic Church? I mean, it's so complex.
It is. The way that I see it, there's a medal that they, a medal that they strike in Rome, or at least in the 19th century, where you have the Pope sitting up on a high altar in St. Peter's, and all these cardinals kneeling down in front of him. And there's a Latin phrase that says, whom they create, they adore. Okay? Crem creant adorant. Who they create, they adore. The Jesuits, if you read their writings, they believe the Pope is kind of like their idol. Okay, just as a man would take a chisel and carve out an idol from stone and then set it up on an altar, that's what the Pope is for them. They create him, they put him up on an altar, and he's got to be the Pope that they want him to be.
So it's a figurehead. It's an organizational structure.
Exactly.
Around which the power behind the throne builds its system. Well, there's no doubt that Rome is deeply behind the EU. No doubt it's calling for a new world order. And just hardcore info. Stay with us, Chris Pinto.